I'm here with Dr. Thomas, the superintendent of District 11. This year, as you all know, has been really something else. I figured a little fireside chat rather than our usual TEDx talks would be an interesting thing to do. And we have quite the opportunity to talk with a community leader here who I think some of what you've posted and said this year has been very useful for our community, and understanding how you think about things and how you lead at District 11 has been really informative for me. So honored to get to talk with you.
Thank you.
A bit about it today.
Great to be here.
Just to get us started, for those who don't know you, would you sort of get us introduced to how you found yourself in education, how you ended up as superintendent at D11?
Sure. You know, it's a great story that I love to tell, and like many college students, young college students, I was trying to find myself and kind of found myself maybe in the wrong paths in life, and was at a local community college actually trying to get myself back on track, and worked at a local YMCA and after school programs with students. And there was a young man named Reggie, little 10-year-old African-American male, and we would play foosball after doing a lot of homework help and support, and he was just a foosball king. He had like 8 arms, and you could spin the ball and it would be flying all over the place. Just he loved it. And then one day he said, "Man, I wish I had a dad like you at home." And I'm in my early 20s, not even thinking about having a wife and kids, and this kid's looking at me like a father figure, and I'm using him as a paycheck. And that was my first aha of what is wrong in my life, and really what am I purposed here to do. And from that moment on, I knew I was convicted to work with young people for the rest of my life. I had a tough situation growing up, and looking at this young African-American boy, I looked at a little mini me, and I wanted to make sure I could affect change for him and many others. Wow.
That's quite the story. It's cool
Yeah.
that you knew that early on that was
Yeah.
what would push you into education.
Yeah.
How does your leadership style now show up in your work at District 11? How does that all work day to day?
Yeah, as we grow, we kind of find our style, or kind of how we present, to the world. And my dominant style of leadership is very collaborative and very relational. I'm a social worker by training, actually. And so as a social worker, you're trained to develop empathy and deep relationships, with people as you kind of help them find, solutions in their lives. And so it's really become a part of who I am as a person, and it shows up in my role as a professional superintendent, where I love to get multiple stakeholder feedback. And I get that through a lot of relationships that I have with people, both inside of our district as well as all throughout the community. And I think that has leveraged my ability to be a superintendent in a very positive way, and have a really positive presence in my communities.
So the transition from realizing that you wanted to work in education, be a role model for young people, to now superintendent of a district, what were some of the early leadership experiences you had there?
Sure.
That made it clear to you that superintendent was the direction you wanted to head?
Yeah, I always tell folks, education found me. And I think if you talk to a lot of educators, many of us didn't grow up saying, "Oh, I want to be a teacher or a counselor or a principal or a superintendent,"
Sure.
It's usually kind of tracing back to maybe a very instrumental person in your own educational career that served as that trigger point to say, "Wow, you were so impactful, and I want to do what you do." And so when as a social worker, I was invited to go into an elementary school in St. Paul and start a school-based mental health program. And when I did that, I found so much success working with these young students, and a lot of my colleagues would say, "Gosh, you should become a principal." And I never thought about becoming a principal, but I thought, okay, maybe being a principal is something I could do one day. And so I kind of took a natural progression into leadership. I left doing smaller groups of student support, and then I went to another district, and I led a lot of diversity and equity leadership issues with that district for about 6 years in that role at the central office. So I had some central office leadership. And that gave me a flavor for not only just working in one school, but across multiple schools in the district. And I said, wow, how do I get to whatever position, and I knew at that point it was the superintendent, to affect the most positive change in a district and in a community. And at the time I was doing my doctorate, and I was also doing my principal and superintendent licensure, and then became an elementary principal. Absolutely loved it. And then I became a junior high principal, and that was my sweet spot. I think being a junior high principal was probably the best job. You have to be kind of crazy to be a junior high teacher or principal, because you know what happens at that developmental stage with students. They're all over the place.
I think we all at the very least remember junior high. And
it's
not a great moment for anyone.
You're really finding yourself, and you need a lot of support around you. And so it was fun because they were just like these mounds of clay, and you could really help shape kind of what they would become in their lives and get them onto that pathway.
So you started seeing some of the impact that you thought maybe early in your career you could make. Starting to happen.
Okay. And then just continue to progress from there as I went into another district leadership position, and then ultimately found myself here in Colorado Springs as the superintendent of the oldest and one of the largest districts in the region.
Wow. So that is part of why I'm so excited to get to have a conversation with you now, because this year has been extraordinary in ways we really can't even describe for
Absolutely.
Especially leadership at schools. It's been so difficult just to even figure out what kind of decisions you can make, much less make the right decision. There are so many things that aren't clear about how we should operate and what we can do in the world with COVID-19 happening. I imagine you've made some probably countless difficult decisions this year at this point.
Yes.
Would you talk to me a little bit about how COVID-19 and your responsibility this year, just some of the small moments that have played out over the course of the year that you think have allowed you to have an impact as a leader?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think COVID-19 has really shaken this entire world, and we're all trying to redefine ourselves in a very different reality, yet still longing for what we knew for so many years of our lives. And I think as a leader, in District 11, I've had to try to bridge both of those experiences with staff and with our community. I don't think we'll ever go back to what we thought was normal, yet we are going to some place we have no idea what it is. And I think that has really bred a lot of fear in our organization. I think it's bred a lot of fear in our community. And as a leader, one of my jobs is to make sure my staff are supported. And that they feel safe, and that they can believe in what is to come tomorrow. And so that's been a lot of my work. I think, again, as a social worker by training, one of the aspects that you are really trained early on is how to be empathetic. And I think that's probably one of the words for the year is empathy. Can you understand and feel where people are at? And I think as a leader, I have to be able to read those tea leaves within my staff, as well as within our students and our families and the broader community, to really make some decisions. And as you stated, it's a real divisive environment right now. I mean, there are people who are absolutely, I gotta wear a mask and all the PPE, and there are some people like, I am just fine, and everything in between. And so when I make a decision, you can rest assured that half the community is gonna love it, and half the community is really going to be questioning it. And so it's almost a lose-lose proposition. But at the end of the day, what keeps me going in this kind of crazy, unknown environment is that my commitment to our students, to our staff, and to our families is unwavering. I have to be the calm in the storm for our staff in our community, and that's something that I think I do very well. And I have an extremely phenomenal team that I work with every day as well, that we can kind of calm the waters and bring assurance that tomorrow is going to be better than what we had today.
It's amazing to hear you talk some about how your team has helped support you and your role supporting your team. I think when it comes to leadership, especially in a world that's increasingly unclear, it's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity as a leader to get to choose the things you're going to be clear on and help your team come to that same clarity.
You're absolutely right. I think a crisis demonstrates the character that we have. It doesn't build character. And what I have seen in all of this is that the staff in our district, absolutely amazing. I can't thank our educators enough for what they do on a daily basis. And they're making significant sacrifices to recreate what instruction looks like, at a moment's notice, and to really lead in the classroom in ways that they've never been prepared for in their teacher prep programs. They were trained to be in a classroom, not necessarily in a classroom and on a computer screen. But it's also stated, and I'm sure this is a very popular phrase, never let a crisis go, wasted. So we have to look for silver linings and opportunities. Education is an industry that for hundreds of years has been in love with itself, not so much willing to change. And this crisis of COVID-19, I think, has really pushed everyone out of their comfort zone, locked the doors, you can't go back. Now what are you going to do? And I think we are ripe for change. And if we don't, then we will get left behind. So I love what's possible. Love what's possible.
I'm glad you're thinking about what's possible. COVID-19 is not the only crisis I think we've had this year. We're heading at full speed into an election that is increasingly divisive in a world that's sort of subject to new social media powers and things that are at play. We've also had enormous events around the country regarding racial justice, and all of that sort of happened at the same time. As you're trying to make decisions about how to reopen a school, you're also trying to make leadership decisions from a socioeconomic standpoint about how to lead a community of people that's parents and students and teachers. And can you talk a little bit about where were your opportunities for leadership and all that this year?
Yeah, I mean, you have just framed the perfect storm. And yeah, we've got a lot of things on our nation's plate right now. As you mentioned, the elections will always be, an opportunity for a great debate. But we have a lot of civil unrest, a lot of social and racial unrest in our country. And this is the real world, right, that we're living in. And I think many of us are saying, is this a dream that I'm in? And no, this is it. And so as a leader, you don't pick and choose, your environment or the context. You really have to be adaptive and be responsive to what's happening. And I think as a superintendent, I know my primary responsibility is to ensure that we execute on our mission to provide high quality academics to our students every single day so that they are prepared to enter the world. But I also know that I'm a public leader. I have a public face in this community. And I do have an ethical and moral responsibility to respond to what's happening in our world, what's happening in our community, because that shows up in our classrooms every single day. This is actually where the real education takes place. It's not necessarily in a 50 by 50 classroom. Wow. So how do we take these current events, and bring these into the instructional realm so that our students understand and can unpack kind of what is happening around them? That's the richest education I think that we can provide. And as the superintendent of the most diverse school district in the district, 50% of my students are students of color. We have over 70 languages spoken in our district. Wow. And, it's my job to ensure that we ensure our students, we see you, we hear you, we will respond to you, our families, our staff, and not run away from all of that, but really embrace that, to bring that in, to understand that, for me personally, a lot of this racial unrest started in my hometown, in Minneapolis. And that's something that I responded to, and my staff know that. And so they're asking me, Michael, how are you doing? And I have to be able to process that, but at the same time, now how do I turn that into a teachable moment for myself, for my staff, and ultimately for our students?
Wow. I think that's what caught my attention and why I wanted to ask to have this fireside chat in the first place is I think we've all had our moments where we rose to the occasion this year, and we've all had our moments where we're just sort of overwhelmed and we check out and stay silent. And for everyone that varies, right? But I was really struck by, I already can't imagine the amount of responsibility that you have trying to choose how to reopen a school well. For you to also take the moment to stand up and really make purposeful comments and choose to be a leader in a situation where you didn't necessarily have to, and turn that into what you're talking about, right? A teachable moment for your staff and students. What is going on, I guess, in your life and in your head as you make that decision?
a great mentor of mine said, leaders get afraid too. They just hang in there 30 seconds longer. And when he shared that with me, that was so powerful because, I do get afraid. I mean, the health and well-being of our students and our staff with COVID-19, that keeps me awake at night. God forbid that I lose a staff member or a student to this illness, right? That would just pain me. Or the civil and racial unrest that we have in the country, and as an African-American leader who can personally identify with that, yes, that does bring some fear in me. Like, am I going to be okay? Am I next, right? That's real thoughts that go through my head. And in this case, when I thought about, what should I say? Because I sat silent for almost 2 weeks because I think I was just emotionally numb. And I talked with my board, and I saw a lot of statements going out by a lot of organizations across the country. That was the politically correct thing to do. But I said, I'm not going to put just political words out there. This means something to our organization. This is our district, and I have to speak to that. And so I had the assurance of my board to say, Michael, speak your truth. And I have to model what I would expect anyone in our organization to do. And so I want our staff to experience that fear, but I want them to experience the support that you can come out and overcome that fear and be truthful about what you need to be successful, or a student, or a community member. So I have a lot of responsibility that you're not going to find in my job description. And I think every leader understands that. It doesn't shut down. When I'm at King Soopers, I run into families all the time, right? So I know I'm kind of always on, and I just need to model what I would want, like my own daughters or my students in the district to do as well.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing some of that.
Yeah.
It's just reassuring to understand how you think about it and have some insight into the process that causes that.
You got to be careful, right? Like it or not, politics finds its way in this role. But my staff hear me say all the time, I will not politic on the back of our students. And so yes, I'm mindful. I think about the words I'm going to use and choose. I really kind of have to try to ride in the middle because I know I serve a community that encompasses both sides of issues. But at the same time, you still have to make decisions as a leader, and not everybody's going to be happy with that, and that's going to be okay.
Just like with decisions with COVID, there's a whole range of possibilities. And
absolutely.
Your role is just to choose the one clear path forward.
With the data that I have, with the participation that I have, with health leaders around me and my staff, yes, we make the best decisions possible, and knowing that those decisions are subject to change as data continues to change or as information changes, right?
And it's never going to be perfect, but sometimes you just have to make the decision and get it as close as
and
you can.
And you can't let perfect get in the way of progress.
There you go. I imagine many of your students, many of your staff will see this video. I'm sure many people in our community who don't get to interact with you on a daily basis will see it as well. Is there a specific message you'd like to share with people who see your leadership and are inspired by it like I was?
So if I had to share a message with our community as a leader, I would really want everyone to understand that it doesn't matter what position you have. I'm a superintendent, I have a doctorate, whatever it might be, you're a student, you're a teacher, you're a grocery store worker. Your position really doesn't matter. It's really about understanding your purpose, your compelling why for what you do. And I actually opened up our school year, my very first year here, helping people understand if you know the why behind your what, it makes your what that more compelling and impactful. And I think together, as we collaborate as a Colorado Springs community, given all the medical crises that we're going through and the civil unrest that we're going through, it's through that collaboration, that deep understanding, that demonstration of empathy that we have to have for one another. Even when that might be an opposing view to what you hold, we have to be open and willing to come together and then be kind of bigger than we are as individuals to emerge from all of this an even stronger Colorado Springs community. That's really the message I want our folks to understand.
All right, Dr. Thomas, thank you so much again for joining us for this conversation right here in Garden of the Gods. It's been quite fun. I'm amazed that it went as well as it did, given we had to kind of set everything up here in the middle of the park. But I think this beats a stage. I really enjoyed the conversation. I appreciate you being here with us.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here, and I enjoyed our conversation as well.